Hey guys, so these 1950s to 1963 Johnson Evinrude 10 horsepower outboards, which you kind of see Frankenstein here together, this was one of my first outboards I ever owned. I love these motors. There is one kind of issue with them, is the 1950s, I think up to 1959, used a dual fuel line gas tank. And what I want to show you in this video is how to convert that to a single line fuel tank and accommodate a fuel pump. Later on in this video, I'll detail all the parts and the steps you need to convert your dual line fuel tank motor to a single line fuel tank. So you may be wondering why we even care. Well, if you got an old fuel tank or an old motor without a fuel tank, it's kind of useless, especially if the fuel tank's corroded. A lot of these old fuel tanks are getting hard to find, and if you do have them, maybe you got a lot of rust or whatnot. And if you convert it to a single line fuel tank, you can now use your old outboard motor with a newer out-of-wood fuel tank and common connection fittings. So the 1960 to 1963 motors used a bypass cover, and you can see here this is an OEM bypass cover that came off one of those motors, and it sat here and it connected to the fuel pump through this interface, and that's the OEM interface for the 1960 to 1963. The 1955 to 1959 just had two of these bypass covers, and it used the dual line fuel tank, so there was not a fuel pump here. These covers are really hard to find. You can't even really find them on eBay. If you do, they sell really fast, and I've been looking for a while, and I hardly ever see them anymore. So a lot of people have reached out to me and they've asked me specifically, hey, I can't find this on eBay. Do you know anybody else who sells them? So what that did was prompt me to machine these unique bypass cover plate, adapter plates, basically, that do the same form, fit, and function as the OEM part. I've put these adapter plates for sale on eBay. You can check the video description below for a direct link that'll take you to eBay where you can purchase them. I'll also have a parts list for everything else you need to convert the dual line to a single line system. All right, so here's where I need a little grace from my viewers. As you can see, I have a Frankenstein QD motor, so I don't have a working recoil starter. Obviously this isn't working, so what I'm gonna have to do in lieu of showing you a running motor with this is just show that this system hooked up to a newer style single line fuel tank will actually pump gas through this hose, which would inevitably be connected to the carburetor. So what I want to show is just shaking this. You don't see any fuel splashing out. Again, my apologies, but I'm going to have to turn this motor over using the emergency rope system I have. So what we're expecting to see is this is what's called a pulse pressure fuel pump, and what we're expecting to see is, as I turn some revolutions on this, fuel to squirt out. That means that the fuel pump is working and pushing fuel inevitably into the carburetor. So watch here for fuel to come out. All right, we saw a little bit there. Probably may take a couple of them to get primed. So again, just shaking it, fuel doesn't come out. So that's real important to know. I have a lot of confidence in this bypass plate. I think it's working perfectly, but I just want to prove it to you guys. So again, it's pumping fuel out. One more time. There we go. So as you can see, it works. Now I'm going to go through all the steps and the parts you need in order to convert your motor from a dual fuel line to a single line. So these are the basic parts that you need to complete this conversion. So you need some fuel line, you need a new gasket, you need a fuel pump, you need a couple of screws to attach the fuel pump to your new bypass cover plate. You'll also need a new connector, a single fuel line connector, which I'll leave a link in the video description. You can find these on eBay. At the moment, you can find a lot of them. You need a new fuel connector because this is the dual fuel line one that you are replacing, which has, you can see, two ports along with the alignment pin. The new single line fuel connector has one port and one alignment pin, so you're going to have to get this. With the new single line fuel connector, you can now connect to your standard issue Atwood connector that you can easily find at Walmart, Amazon, or any real marine store. Along with the fuel pump should come one of these gaskets. This gasket goes here and sits in between the bracket and the fuel pump. That being said, you're going to want to make sure that you have the right link screws. This bracket has two number 1024 threaded holes in it. So these screws need to be number 1024 screws. For this fuel pump, these screws need to be at least 2 inches long. Once you have all your parts laid out and ready, you're going to remove the bypass cover here. You're going to put your gasket on, put your newly bought interface plate on, then you're going to put the fuel pump and its gasket, screw it to the two number 1024 screws here, and then you're going to hook up your fuel lines. Your main fuel line is going to come from your single fuel line connector here, wrap around and interface into the largest diameter port on the fuel pump. The smaller diameter port is going to go out of the fuel pump and into the carburetor over here. The carburetor connection is here. Since this is a 1960 to 1963 motor, it does not have the pressure port here to cap off. If you have a 1955 to 1959, there's going to be a brass pressure port fitting here that looks almost exactly like this one, and you need to cap that off using a fuel line and a zip tie or some methods. I recommend not making the method to cap it off permanent in case you ever want to revert it back for whatever reason. I have another video on my channel from a year and a half ago where I explained all this. So if you want a little more detail or you want to look at another video regarding it, just check out my channel, look in the videos. It's called Converting Dual Fuel Line to Single Fuel Line something. You'll find it. But thanks for watching, and don't forget to click like and subscribe. It helps me out. Thank you.